everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, and once again, I'll be your host. And as per usual, I am joined by Scott and Joris. Scott and Joris, how are you guys doing this evening?
Hey guys, I'm really good. It's great to be back together again, especially after the international break. And didn't it take us long? Only one match day back, and managers are harassing referees and asking them to check and counter-check VAR already. I'm looking at you, Florian Kofeld.
But as of recording, still no manager has lost his job yet. So that's a positive, I guess. But let's see how that will be when this episode comes out.
Fingers crossed for their own sakes, they'll still all be in a job by then. Yeah, no, you're right, Scott. That's definitely going to be a topic of discussion, I think, on this episode. Quickly run through the results post-international break. Antwerp, they got a nice, easy, comfortable win away at winless Westerlo, as we're going to start calling them now. That was 3-0. Molenbeek came from behind to beat a informed Cercle Bruges 2-1. Genk went away to Union and they won 2-0. Club Bruges came from behind to beat Charleroi 4-2. Into Sunday, that game Scott was talking about, that ended 3-1 to Standard Liege over Eupen. Kortrijk were denied late by Anderlecht. That one finished 2 goals apiece. Leuven drew 1-1 with Ghent. And then Sint-Truiden won 2-0 over KV Mechelen. Let's head to the Kuip then for the Westerlo against Antwerp. As I said, Westerlo going into this without a win in a league all season. That didn't change in this one. They were very much...
I'll have to interrupt here, of course. The Cup is the one from Feyenoord, and the Cup is from Westerlo, not to be confused, of course. Sorry, just before we get all kinds of rectifications.
People are like, why are they playing over there? Yeah, the Bene League hasn't officially started yet, if people were getting confused. But yes, it only took Antwerp 15 minutes to take the lead. Really poor play from Westerlo in this one. Gillikens playing it into the midfield area. The midfielder, I can't remember who it was now. I can't remember if it was Sidorchuk or Vanino, just not coming back to get the ball. Mandela Keita, as he so often does, was just so much quicker. There's this kind of, I think he did this, he's done this before. He did this against Union where he just kind of wins the ball back and sets up a goal. Did it here. Drives into the box, squares it to Janssen. Janssen tucks it in. 1-0 to Antwerp. It could have been more for them, but they didn't get the second one until the 67th minute. Yeli Bataille with a really, really nice finish into the corner. Some fine work from Arthur Vermeer and then set up the third goal, which Muya just basically had to tap in to make it 3-0. Yeah, as I said, just felt really, really comfortable for Antwerp. Westerlo at home, only 8 shots. Antwerp finishing with 16, 59% possession. And I think what kind of impressed me about this performance, guys, was that they've obviously got the game against Barcelona coming up and they weren't distracted ahead of that. Like they could have gone into this game and been like, thinking a little bit too much about that. But it felt like Van Bommel had them focused on this one and they were, comfortable winners over Westerlo, I have to say.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a very good sign going into this game from Westerlo's point of view that Jonas de Rook was saying pre-match a couple of days before that he was hopeful that Antwerp might be a little bit distracted. So that kind of underlined, we know they've been stuttering somewhat, Westerlo to kind of get into any kind of effective groove at all. And, we've talked about how they don't quite look right yet. They just sort of don't look happy. And, that set the tone for me in pre-match for this. The performance wasn't much better. I thought Antwerp, very, very professional, easy away win. Much for De Rock to ponder if he's given a chance to ponder for another few days, because some of the other results this weekend not entirely going their way either, actually. One in particular might buy him another week, but I do think he's in trouble at the moment. Good performance from Antwerp. Sometimes, we know sides struggle coping domestically and juggling European football. And although they haven't played, obviously, their first Champions League game yet, they're approaching the start of this really hectic period for them very, very well. And often that's the way to go about it. Set a standard. Don't treat domestic football any differently to European football. So yeah, you're right, Ben. Mark Van Bommel will be absolutely delighted, I think, with the performance there, kind of going into that as well. And it maintains pressure on other sides around the top as well, because I think some of Antwerp's what sides that are hoping will be title challengers to them this year, certainly in the playoff one spot, I think are probably looking at Europe and hoping it might be a bit of a distraction for them. And I had a concern before they'd qualified that if they did qualify, they weren't going to be necessarily strong enough to really do anything on both fronts, and it might hamper them domestically. But looking at this, I might have been proved wrong early doors about that, because there was no indication that Joris was right, that anybody was looking particularly distracted at all. Great stuff from Antwerp, and a lot of worries. I think those Westerlo worries are starting to pile up a bit now.
Well, the Antwerp things, it's very premature to say, because I do think that a lot of it has also to do with the depth in that squad, and you can't really judge that on one single game before the whole madness started, obviously. But that's still, well, also the opposite is not, can't say anything yet. That's the main message that I'm saying here. It was the first win from Antwerp, or the first loss from Westerlo at home against Antwerp ever in an official game, though. So that's a nice statistic for this game. For Westerlo's side as well, then, well, I have written down defensive nightmare on the first, the second, and the third goal. So yeah, that's not really great. The first one being the worst of all, I guess. And coming back to what Ben said in his high, when he went through the game, yeah, I guess it was both players there actually. So that's the definitely some defensive miscommunication there. And the keeper playing the ball there, of course. But on the other hand, I guess one of the two players should have taken care of that. But and also 16 goals conceded now after 7 games, not a healthy average. But okay, you can get away with it, but then you need to score up front, and that's also not happening as much as last season. Because to be honest, they had that last season as well a bit. But yeah, Antwerp then, well, I suppose a cruise control win, you could say. Very efficient, 3 goals from 4 shots on target. That efficiency is definitely a quality that we have seen a few times this weekend, and we'll come back to it later as well. And for Janse, it's also his 5th goal, and also his 5th goal on Friday. Of course, that comes a bit with Antwerp playing relatively a lot on Friday in comparison to other teams as well. Muya deserves a mention, I guess. Not necessarily, I think we all three are not necessarily the biggest fan of his, but his sub appearance really went well, obviously, with a goal and an assist. So good for them. And yeah, for the Rook, also, I feel like you can't really judge him on this specific game, but they do definitely need to pick up points at Westerlo soon against whoever. Maybe some luck just needs to go into their favor. Things do need to change quickly.
Yeah, no, they really do. I think you kind of made a really good point there on Joris. I think he is better off the bench. I think his style of play is better suited off the bench, because he just kind of gets it and runs, like wants to run with it, and he's quite direct. And I don't think it always works early doors, but I think when they've got tired legs, he's a little bit more effective. On Westerlo, yeah, you mentioned that defence. They brought in Emin Baram on deadline day on loan from Galatasaray. He was chucked straight into the starting lineup, and it looked messy at the back there. And I think they have spent a lot of money, and they brought in some really kind of exciting young players, but then is that like you're kind of, these players are young and exciting because of what we think they can become, not what they are now, if you know what I mean. I think that might be a slight concern, maybe, I don't know. But then you look through the team and you've got the likes of like Chadley, Sidorchuk, who's now come in with a bit more experience in central midfield, Neustatter as well. He's hardly like a spring chicken, is he? So they have got that mix. And I think, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking surely they're going to be able to turn it around at some point. But at the moment, it does just look really, really poor. We have kind of said, obviously, just in a bit there, that Antwerp weren't distracted on the pitch, but off the pitch, they were certainly distracted with the Champions League. Poor old Samuel Vines is not going to be able to play Champions League football because someone put Bjorn Engels down instead of him onto the Champions League squad, and they can't reverse it. Bjorn Engels, probably half of you forgot he even played for Antwerp. He didn't play at all last season. He hasn't played for almost 2 years now. So, yeah, it's been quite a while for him.
The story is a bit more different. In theory, they could both be on them because there's 21 players on the only of the 25 possible players. But for example, on the A list that is, and on the B list, which includes Vermeer and Van den Bosse, for example, generally just the young players that don't need to be on that list. So yeah, they could have played around a bit with these lists and actually make everything possible, but it did not happen. Yeah, that's yeah, that's very sad for Sammy Vines there.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It's bizarre. These things just kind of keep happening, don't they, guys? You see this with sides almost every year at different levels. You see these, what would you call it, an administrative error, all of that sort of stuff. What did you guys...
Ajax and Overmars in Haller for a few seasons ago, for example.
Exactly, yeah. Speaking of Ajax, actually, I was going to ask what you guys made of Owen Vindel's debut. I saw a few flashes from him to suggest that if he can, do some of the things he was trying to do in this game, then, as we were already saying, he could be a very big, good pickup for the great old.
Yeah, I think he looked like, I think you're right. I think the flashes is definitely right. I think there was definitely some moments where you're like, yeah, this kid could be a really good signing. I think we've kind of thought that he might be better than Avia anyway. So I mean, he's definitely not as like I wasn't as worried that he's going to get himself sent off quickly. Avia somehow managed to not do that, but I think with the injury to Sammy Vines, like he's obviously going to get more game time, and I think it's going to be good. Good for him. So yeah, I think it seems like a decent pickup, and when Vines is back, that's like some really good options they've got at fullback. Let's move on to the Saturday games. Let's go into the capital. Let's go to where Molenbeek were facing Cercle Bruges. It was Cercle who got off to the better start in this one, with Kevin Denke giving them the lead after just about 5 or 6 minutes. Really, really nice finish into the corner from him. At that point, you thought, maybe Cercle are going to really kind of take control of this game and push on. But 10 minutes later, Mahtar Gay got his second goal for Molenbeek to make it 1-1. Into the second half we go, and after around about 57 minutes, Javier Messier assist to Luis Giovanni Segovia to make it 2-1 to Molenbeek. Cercle pushed. In 97th minute, they had a chance, but Teodofoni made a wonderful save, flying off his line to deny Cercle an equaliser. So it finished 2-1 to Molenbeek. Good win for them. Frustration for Cercle because they could have gone to the top of the table with a win. However, I think on the kind of face of it, obviously Cercle have been doing really well, but for Molenbeek, guys, this is like before the season when we were saying about them kind of their chances of staying up. These are the sort of games that when they're picking up points, they're really, really going to help them. And I think, to be fair to Kakapa, he's kind of got them playing some nice football. He's definitely worked out who he thinks his kind of best strike force is. He's going Mahtar Gay and Mikkel Bowen, and I think that's a nice partnership. And it's just every time I see those two line up, I just think of Port East End fans in the Challenger struggling away, just looking at that strike force and thinking that could have been ours like a couple of seasons ago, but it's not to be. But yeah, good win for Molenbeek. That's 10 points off of 6 games for them. Cercle still in the top 4, so still a really, really good start to the season, but I think they'll be frustrated, won't they, after having taken the lead so early?
Definitely. I mean, I think one of the interesting things about this game, I thought, was that Molenbeek managed to do something that very, very few sides have managed to do, and that is get the better of Cercle physically. But particularly in the second half as well. I mean, I expected Cercle to come out and be much better in the second half and squeeze the game a bit, which they weren't able to do. In fact, quite the opposite happened. It was them that got squeezed. And I don't think I've actually seen Big Miron Musluk, as kind of quiet and as distant as he did this weekend. You know, I mean, he looked a bit resigned to kind of what was going on, as if, you know, he couldn't quite figure out what was happening, and you know, that's that thing of, you know, when a side gets the better of you, sort of unexpectedly somewhat. Me and Joris were kind of chatting about this a little bit while the game was ongoing, and I remember Joris saying to me, "Oh, that this result is going to, you know, make a few coaches a bit nervous," and I think he's right about that. I'm sure he's going to talk about that in a minute, because, you know, Cercle, I think, rightly would have been expected to go there and win. And Molenbeek's home form, we know, is going to be very important. And what they've done really well so far is pick up points against sides that they would be expected to, and would certainly hope to. It's some of the bigger boys that have given them a bit of a schooling so far, but you would expect that, especially this early in the season. But to dominate Cercle physically the way that they did was actually quite impressive. And especially considering Cercle started the game reasonably well. Brilliant goal by Kevin Denke, by the way. What a fantastic finish that is. And on the subject of Big Kev, he's having a really good season so far as well, and you know, is kind of top of the scoring charts, and kind of cruising along nicely without getting too much attention at the moment from the media, that is. But in the background, there are lots of agents and lots of movement and lots of interest in him, which has been ongoing for kind of quite a while. So his stock is certainly raising all the time, and will continue to do so if he keeps playing like that. But tactically, this was quite an interesting game as well. It really was. Molenbeek, I've noticed, guys, they've started pretty slowly in most of the games, home and away this season. It's almost as if it just takes them a little while just to kind of figure out the opposition, make some changes, and but before they can kind of grab a game, they've not started hard or fast at any point yet. And I think that's something that maybe is just inherent in Kappa's approach, possibly. But this is a really good win for them. And I think if Molenbeek can make the Edmund Machtens a really hard place to go, like Union do with the Joseph Marian, then that can be the bedrock on which obviously they lay the foundations for hopefully maintaining their league status, which is their ultimate goal this season. But yeah, Cercle just need to chalk this up as one where it didn't quite come off for them. It's just particularly disappointing that, you know, they took the lead and then, you know, you lose it that way rather than other way around.
Yeah, that's well, I think you said already a lot, but I just want to mention that dying second head save from the Vernoe once more. That deserves that. And yeah, well, I think Ben mainly touched on the things I want to say about Molenbeek there. With Biron and Gay playing and in combination with Mercier, that I do think that at the moment definitely that gives them the edge over some other teams, and that we would expect a lower in the table. At the moment, they're even mid-tables, and they might even stay there. A little bit more worried about the defense still, but it looks like Segovia. He is a recruitment, is a good reinforcement there, and well, he already contributed up front as well this time, so that's a plus for him. And like Scott mentioned, that I was already saying, like this win from Molenbeek definitely put a lot of pressure on more managers that had their games later in that weekend, and a nice cushion for them already with already 10 points, that they already have and that you can't take from them anymore. Cercle, also a lot of things said already. Denki on target again, fifth goal of the season already as well. First loss after 3 wins as well, though, to break a little winning streak that Cercle had going. And I also wanted to mention, Sike had got an assist on the Denki goal, even though Denki did most of the work, obviously. But for the equalizer, he was also way too soft on the ball with Byron. Biron.
Do you know what I think is going to happen, guys? Actually, I don't know what you think, but you know, me talking about Molenbeek dominating Cercle physically, I think, you know, coming back to what Joris was saying about this making some coaches quite nervous, I think this is a game that a lot of coaches will go back and re-watch from the point of view of modelling how do we combat Cercle's physicality, because they've had a way of playing now for the best part of a couple of seasons, which has been working really well for them and will continue to do so, I think. But Molenbeek tactically did some things this weekend without turning this pod into an analysis of that particular game. I think that managers are going to want to go away and have a much closer look at, I think, because it was really pretty effective for them.
Yeah, and I think the opposite will also happen. That Circular, we know what they're like in terms of their analysis and data and kind of rewatching the games and taking like learning points from them and stuff like that. They're going to go and do that as well. So I think it'll be really interesting to watch this game in the next when they play each other again, when Molenbeek come to the Amber Idol, to see kind of how Circular adapts to Molenbeek or what they do in terms of that. So yeah, interesting tactically. Scott, I'd found it funny you've mentioned the Joseph Marion as a fortress for Union on this weekend of all weekends. When Genk went there and within 16 minutes they were ahead. The new man Zakiri getting his first goal, and I mean, if you as a striker wanted a kind of opportunity to score a first goal for the club, this is the one you'd want. Joseph Pansel sprinting down the right wing, cutting it across. You just have to tap it in. He does that. He gives them the 1-0 lead in front of the away fans as well at that end of the ground, like the perfect opportunity, the perfect place to do that. Union thought they should have potentially had a penalty when Amani went down in the box, although for me, he sticks his leg. It's very hard to describe this on a podcast. I think you kind of have to see it. But he sticks his leg out and like initiates the contact in such a way that it didn't look like a natural movement of his left foot. I feel like if he just focused on crossing the ball, he may have actually got the penalty because he might have been taken out there. Burgess was welcoming Zakiri to the league, I guess we can say, with his usual manner of intimidation. But I think the striker dealt pretty well with it, to be fair. Van der Voort made a really fine save in the first half to keep Union out. Union in this game, 24 shots. Absolute ridiculous amount of shots. But an XG very similar to Genk. Genk 2.01, Union 1.98. So Genk with only 7 shots, Union with 24. It shows you how kind of inefficient Union were in this one. The moment I knew Genk were going to win this game was when substitute Mohamed Amora hit the post and other substitute Gustav Nielsen, just his legs were all over the place, could not do anything about it, put it wide. I felt like, yeah, that's it. This is kind of Genk are going to ride this one out. They've got the luck on their side. And it was pretty much confirmed they had the luck on their side when Tolu comes on the 77th minute, late in the game, running through, shot saved by Maurice. He falls over, Tolu does, but still manages to head it across goal to Galaza to head in to make it 2-0 to Genk. Hilarious assist. This one cracked me up so much. Just Tolu on the floor and the ball hit him in the face and flying across to Galaza. Took a little bit of VAR time before it was confirmed. Franken looked absolutely delighted when that one was given and kind of completely relieved. So I think, yeah, a very, very good win for Genk. One I think, Joris, they definitely needed after this kind of stuttering start to the season. But then you look at the table and only 3 points off the top. So they've managed to stay in there, and now they've got the striker in. Zakiri, first game, first goal. Were you impressed with what you saw from him? Do you think he's the striker that, yeah, is the answer to Genk's problems?
It definitely helps to have more options either way. Whether he is the one or not, well, this game is difficult to judge that on because Genk were just really poor, to be honest. Definitely at the ball. And also defending. I don't know how Genk won this game, to be honest. Yeah, there's no shame in admitting that. That's. I'm also with that Amura strike. I'm also still very happy he did try to take it and make it like that instead of taking it on his left foot, which should have been easier actually to score. But well, for Union, was their first time in 23 home games in a regular season, because I believe in the playoffs against Antwerp last season they also didn't score. And yeah, you could see why. And yeah, indeed, 25 shots or 24 shots, but only 4 on target. That is just underlining that statistic. a bit as well, of course. That they should have done. They also made a few holes in the air, I think, where they could have. Well, if they would have hit the ball, that there was a big chance it would have gone in. But not regardless of that, they should have scored it definitely here. Regardless of Van der Voort having a decent performance, but they could have tested him even more. I feel, and that's a question I'll throw to you guys. You can come back to it later. But like, does Union have a scoring problem because they have scored the majority of their goals on penalties? No, they're still at this point in the game, in the league. Obviously they do not have any striker the genre of Boniface at the moment. That's not a shame of it, but regardless of that, they seem to be lacking something up front at times. They can be dominating games. For going back to a few points for Genk as well, then first time that they win their first 3 away games of the league season in history. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's a stat really worth mentioning. But also no goals conceded yet away, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and also only 2 goals conceded still. Like I'm still, like I told you guys already, like I am beyond, it's beyond me how that happened. But okay, I guess it has to do this time with the opponent missing a lot of chances or just missing the target even in general. And like Ben said, Sekiri already off the mark straight away. One of the many players I will indicate in the upcoming the rest of the games coming on that scored his first goal. For a typical game after the transfer window closed. There's many players getting off the mark. Sekiri, one of them. After a brilliant through ball from Hannah, I think that ball deserves some praise here as well. Also Galarza actually also got his first goal. That's not in his first game here, but also a first goal. And that assist, it's really brilliant when you look at it, because like you can also clearly see that he means to do that. So that's I don't know anyone who could do that, I guess, even with such purpose. And well, worth mentioning is of course a bit as well, like especially the first half, Union, well, they dominated the whole game, but especially in the first half, they created a lot of chances. Franke made some changes at the break, bringing Horozovsky on and for Oyen, so a central midfielder for a left winger, and trying to put more, even more pieces, because Union also already had put a lot of pieces in the midfield, which caused them to dominate, I guess, and find the spaces quite easily. And that seems to have paid off a little. Of course, Union still could have scored, but they were creating a lot less in the second half, outside of that strike from Amura and a few. Yeah, well, you anyway have a few moments, but that change, which is a bit unusual, but seems to have helped to at least make it less easy for Union to play through the lines. But nonetheless, I'm very happy that with this smash and grabber in here.
Yeah, I think Joris should be very happy with it. I thought it was a really hard fought win for the Genkies. Actually, I thought they competed physically really well with Union, and Union for me did deserve something out of the game, but were kind of wasteful with the chances that they did create. I mean, they get in behind 2 or 3 times quite early on in the first half and wasted opportunities where they should have scored. And when you look at their output in the game, then I think they did deserve something out of it. It was interesting to hear Alexander Blesson immediately after the game in the centre circle talking to his players, when he said, look, I'm not disappointed, I'm not angry, we deserved something out of the game, but it didn't happen. We played well, just being one of those games. So it's funny football, isn't it? It really is. And I thought that Genk did a lot of the kind of dirty things around the game that people have been quite critical of them, particularly last season, including us on a couple of points where we said that maybe physically they're not competing with some sides the way that they would hope to and want to. I think they really did those elements very, very well in this game. I mean, just looking at some kind of basic numbers, they actually, defensively, they had sort of 19 interceptions at kind of key points in the game, and the duelling figures are bizarrely 50-50. Union had marginally the better of the duels overall, but they were so even on that Genk won the key ones at the key moments. Obviously, they were the margins. Rankin will be delighted with it, I think, because it's a very difficult place to go, as we were just sort of setting up, apart from this weekend, although ironically it still is, because Union I thought played well. I know some of their fans were on social media after the result of the weekend were pretty disappointed, but that's more of an indication of how difficult a place it's been to go and how consistently they tend to win more often than not, Union, that their fans, even after a good performance, felt that wasn't really good enough. But when you look and pick the performance apart, they were actually quite good. Genk got the better on the margins, and that psychologically I think is kind of quite significant, particularly when we're looking at two sides here who would and should consider themselves title challengers once again.
Yeah, and off the back of that result, Union drop into ninth, but obviously they've still got that game in hand on a couple of teams above them, whereas Genk jump into, as I said earlier, they're in the top 6, 3 points off of Ghent in first. Another side with title ambitions, but not very title-like defending, is Club Brugge. They hosted Sporting Charleroi at the Amber on Saturday night. And it was the Zebras who got off to a much better start. Parfait Guijon got them going in the 5th minute, 1-0, thanks to new signing Vettel Dragsnes getting an assist. He, would have a really, really decent debut, actually, from him. Took Club about 20-odd minutes to get back into the game after that, but in that time, Charleroi did have a host of chances. The defence was just, all over the place, really, and I thought Charleroi really should have taken a couple more of the ones that they did create. But Skov Olsen was the provider this time for Thiago Rodriguez to get another goal to make it 1-1. Just before half-time, that man Dragsnes scored a fantastic goal, even if it did take a deflection off Mekele, chopping inside and whipping it towards the far corner. A little deflection off Mekele and past Mignolet into the corner. Goal and an assist on his debut. Even gave him FootMob's man of the match. And I mean, it's quite difficult on the losing side, especially if you lose like 4-2 like Charleroi did in this game. To get man of the match, you have to have played pretty well. So fair play to him. He looked like a really good signing. Mekele made up for that deflected goal by putting one in the other end. Just 3 minutes later, Charleroi really couldn't hold on to a lead in this one. Into the second half, died around the changes. Nusa came on. Kasper Nielsen came on as well, but it was that man Nusa who made the difference near the end of the game. About 87 minutes gone, he puts the I thought it was a cross. I don't know what you guys think, but I'm pretty sure it was a cross, but just goes all the way in past Coffee into the back of the net. 95th minute, he then turns provider. Ferran Nuclear's back, and he was back with a goal, and a really, really nice finish, actually. Just faking out a defender, cutting in, and then smashing it into the back of the net like he had never been away. So Nusa is going to get all the plaudits again, coming off the bench, making an impact after I think he got a couple of assists during the international break for Norway as well. For Charleroi, I think they were better than this result, especially in the first half. I thought they played quite well, but they just couldn't really hold on to the lead. But neither side were defensively great in this one. But Dragsnes looks like a decent player. For Club Brugge, I guess I was kind of thinking about this today, guys, but they're attacking, that forward kind of attack is so powerful. And then they've got these guys they can bring off the bench as well. Like, it almost makes up for the bad defending in a way that they're then going, I think they call it, in like American football, they call it like a track meet, where it's just like, they're going either way, and it's like whoever's fitter is going to win. And this one, it's kind of just like we'll just try and outscore you. We're not even going to try and defend. Which, I mean, it may work in certain games, but against the better teams, you think they'd probably come unstuck. But it was an entertaining game. Really, really enjoyed watching this one. But in the end, it was Club who came out on top.
Yeah, you were saying it, Ben. It was entertaining, and I think Charleroi did play their part. And I agree with you. I think they were better this week. So I think there are some encouraging signs for them that they might be starting to turn the corner that they're looking to turn. That's the way that Felix Mazou will be looking at it anyway. From a club point of view, I think my big takeaway this week was something we've already been aware of, but it really kind of hit me this week, and that was just, what Ben was kind of hinting at a minute ago about that strength and depth. Even if something isn't quite working for you the way that you would want, Dyla can make a change that is almost like for like in terms of quality, if not better, and that is allowing them to kind of get over the line in games now. I had a feeling that this game might have petered out a little bit for them, but when you look at the bench, that was what made the difference for me. He's able to bring on kind of Casper Nielsen, Nusa, who, as Ben was saying, has had a pretty extraordinary week by most people's standards. Getting a goal, coming on, making a match-winning difference here, as well as really significant performance for his country during the week as well. So massive week for him. Big player. Has a bright future ahead of him, as we know. Ronny Dyler's a kind of a big fan. Lots of people watching him at the moment. But yeah, the strength and depth in that squad is frightening, and I think that's the thing that longer term, as we talked way back at the start of the season when we were saying, actually, look at this squad, it's really pretty good. It has all of the tools to kind of go and be where it wants to be. It's starting to pay off in games, and having Ferran Jutla back and available, even if he's not starting, is a massive plus for them as well, because we know what he can do, and we got a reminder this weekend. But yeah, I mean, embarrassment of riches really for Ronny Dyla, and I think he's just really pleased that he's got that depth there, because there was a little bit of surprise relief to me with those two late goals. He was kind of delighted with them, because I think he knew that they should have had this game well won before they actually did. So to do it in the manner they did in the end, I think allows the press to give him a bit of an easier ride, because it could have finished a draw, this one.
Your list saved them so many times, and I'm so worried about their defense still. So I'll throw that to in the middle here, definitely.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree with you, Joris. Actually, yeah, completely agree with you. A bit manually.
I'll keep repeating that defense isn't good enough. That despite all the depths in up front, that balance in that squad is so. I don't get why they did not do that, and it might not cost them in the end, or it might. But I'm still surprised that they didn't bring in at least one more quality defender as well. But that's. They got away with this one, really. In my mind, equalizing still before the break proof was the main point in this game for me, of course. Then, but Jutla from off the mark. On the other side, also two players off the mark, Gouyagon, or I hope I didn't butcher that one, and Draxner, both off the mark as well. Like I said, there were many players that got off the mark in this game. And for Charleroi, the good performance, but again, no win for them. That should be worrying. They're supposed to be quite good defensively in the organization, but that seems to be completely off this season as well, for most games as well. Or maybe not completely off, but in it shows in some games. And in up front, they do need to do a bit more, even though in this game, I guess they did enough up front, but they should have done even more. And then they might have won or gotten something out of this game at least. Because that definitely was a cross from Nusa as well, indeed, for that third goal. And but of course, I'm not denying anything of the depth that Club Brugge has up front, and very. I feel like it actually might be enough to cover up for the defense, but I'm surprised that I'm just mainly surprised that they did not do not much to do to fix that defense. Well, fix or to get a bit more quality in depth in defense.
It's an interesting point, that actually, the one that Joris highlights around their defence, I think, because there were a couple of players that they were linked very heavily with quite late on in the window, both of whom were centre halves, of course, and neither of them did they manage to bring in. So I think it is something that they were aware of, and since they failed to do that, if failed is the right word, maybe the deals just weren't right, and that's why they didn't move in them. But I think it does highlight that, you know, they're aware of this, and they have talked up as well. I've noticed that they're happy with what they have at the back. Some of the links in terms of those players suggest that they aren't entirely. And I think, you know, what I was emphasising, the embarrassment of riches up front, does certainly distract and cover from that. Joris's point, I suppose, is ultimately the key one. Will the issue there? And there is an issue. I do agree with Joris about that. Will that issue catch up with them at some point? That's a big question we don't know the answer to yet, but certainly one to watch out for.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny we're talking about this because their official account tweeted today about, just with a picture of that back four, was like the homemade defence. I mean, I was like, well, not very well made, was it? Because it's been pretty poor. It's still quite young, and I think that's one of the problems.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that Simon Mignolet is currently on my fantasy football bench, and he's the most expensive keeper in the game. So it's just, it's not good. And I think they're lucky that they're definitely going to be able to outscore most teams in the Pro League. That's just what it is. But like, let's not beat around the bush. Like, Charleroi are hardly the most exciting, free-flowing attacking side, and in that first half, I thought Charleroi really looked really good going forward. So interesting. It is really interesting. I mean, it's entertaining. That's the thing.
Exactly. I wanted to highlight that I'm actually enjoying watching Club Brugge's games because there's always anything happening. And, well, maybe they even can outscore any team in the league. Okay, against Ghent they already didn't, but in most games indeed, and maybe against every opponent they should. Well, they have so many goals in them. But, just it's entertaining indeed, like was going there.
It's a risky strategy in this league, which we know how physically competitive it is, much more so than I think people appreciate. So, yeah, I mean, it's as a manager like Ronnie Dyla, who, you know, is all about free flowing attacking football. I think there is an element to his natural game as a coach where he does look at things that way. So these things bother him a little bit less, I think. But in this league, I think over the course of a season, that's what I mean. I think, you know, it could come back to haunt you in a way. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see if they bring anyone in and more experienced in January, for example, just to see through the second half of the season as well. But I suspect that'll be determined by where they're sitting come the end of the year.
Yeah, well, they've got some experience on the bench, but unfortunately that experience is not much better than what they've got out there. He did make an appearance, to be fair, but by then it was, they'd pretty much won the game. Talk about not great defensively, or maybe not very convincing, Kortrijk and Anderlecht. This was an entertaining game, to say the least. Plenty of things happening. Maybe some conspiracy theories could be flying around, but we'll get to that in a bit. Kortrijk took the lead from their own box, basically. Anderlecht set piece, or I think it was a corner, cleared by Shea Ojo, who's been given an assist for this, which is mental, because Deneuve basically has to like piggyback Sardea, win the header on the halfway line, run from the halfway line all the way into the Anderlecht box, and then put it underneath Dupé to make it 1-0, who's come out and said he's not worried about Kasper Schmeichel being here, which is fine now that he's got a broken rib, but I think he probably was a bit concerned.
That helps the competition.
Yeah, so I think he's safe as number one for now. He did make a very decent save in this game, actually, to be fair to him. But that came after Anderlecht had equalised, deflected strike from Kasper Dolberg, before Deneuve had actually scored. A Musa had hit the crossbar as well, which I'm sure Joris was wishing he'd done a couple of weeks ago against Genk rather than this one. But yeah, as I said, Dupé made a really good save from Avenatti in just near the end of the first half to deny the big striker, but he wouldn't be denied the next time round when Dupé, De Bast, and Vertonghen decided to just completely mess things up. Dupé to De Bast back to Dupé passes to Vertonghen. It was very much like the Gillikens one where Vertonghen, he just doesn't come towards the ball at all. I believe it was it Kadri who was able to sneak in. One of the Kortrijk players is able to sneak in. Well, not even sneak and just run in and take the ball. Plays it back across to Avenatti. Poor De Bast has had to now cover for Dupé's mistake. Sprints over, tries to make it look like he heads it, but he just punches it off the line. Avenatti's like staring at Kevin Van Dam like, are you going to give that as a penalty? Like, this is the most obvious handball. If he hadn't, I think Avenatti would have hit him. He looked that like way like so like highly strung at that point. Obviously gives a penalty. De Bast sent off, doesn't even look at the referee, just saunters off the pitch. Avenatti steps up, smashes it in. Kortrijk are 2-1 up. They've just got to see through the next half an hour with a man advantage. And then I think it's a little bit later on, with kind of 9 minutes to go, Marco Canna. Now, if you don't know, Marco Canna is currently on loan at Kortrijk from Anderlecht. He gets sent off. And I mean, if you got conspiracy theories, now's your time to kind of, if you're into that sort of stuff, you can be like, hang on a second, what's going on here? He did look pretty distraught, to be fair to him. But you can't get yourself sent off against your parent club.
Did you see him, guys? See, speaking of Canna, this is a really interesting thing. When he was walking off the pitch, guys, I'm sure you spotted this. He was tapping his forehead, and I thought, he's giving it the why did I do that? Why did I do that type thing? And I thought, a lot of things that happen in games are instinctive for players. You know, we watch them and we go, oh, that's mental. That's a really daft thing to do. Why has he done that? And I do appreciate, you know, having talked to some players that they go, well, what people watching don't sometimes appreciate is certain things are instinctive, including bad tackles and things like that. But yeah, that moment he was tapping the centre of his forehead, either that or it was some weird NFP thing he was up to.
It was just in such a weird place in the pitch as well. Like, it was just, it wasn't the most dangerous aspect of the game that he did it in. Obviously, it comes back to bite them in the 97th minute. Sardea launches the ball into the box, headed clear straight to Delaya, who smashes it into the back of the net to make it 2-2. Kortrijk denied that first win of the season. They do move off the bottom though. Westerlo are now bottom. Kortrijk are now second bottom with their second point. Yeah, what a ridiculous game. Absolutely ridiculous. And it really doesn't help the kind of that feeling we had about Anderlecht when they went on that little run a couple of weeks ago and started to win some games. We're like, I'm still not convinced. And I think this game kind of summed up, still not convinced, even though they've made a lot of signings and stuff like that. And I don't know, we saw Thorgan Hazard. He came on. Eden was in the building, I think, as well, if I remember rightly, or a couple of the Hazards, as many as there are, were in the building as well. So it's nice to see him in the league. Let's see what he can produce. But frustration for Brian Riemer, kind of relieved at the end. But I'm sure looking at this is a game that they were like, if they've got any ambition of top 4, top 6, or title is probably not really an ambition, let's be honest, but any kind of ambition, they have to beat a side like Kortrijk.
Well, Brian Riemer gave a very, very interesting and frank post-match interview where he described this as, and I quote, a complete disaster. That was his analysis of this game. He said every decision we made was wrong. Everything we could have done wrong, we did. And I love it when coaches are as frank as that, where he just came out and he just absolutely laid it all out. Didn't spare Zeno de Bast's blushes either. He was actually asked about that, and he should have just let it go in the net. You know, players, we have the old taking one for the team cliche. Not only did he take one for the team here, he took two for the team because he got himself sent off. There's the penalty, which they then score. So they're a man down and another goal down. So, from a coach's point of view, it's kind of enraging stuff. But I think Brian Reimer's main gripe was just the general performance level was absolutely nowhere near the standards that they expect. And he said that as well. He's quite clear about how he'd spoke to his players afterwards about the expectations that he and the club have of them, and that performances and decision making like the ones that they exhibited throughout the course of this game really were so poor. He says if you play like that, you're not going to get anywhere at any level. So he was really, really angry, and I actually thought Anderlecht were poor, so he wasn't wrong. But to see him come out and actually just call everybody out, I thought was really interesting. So I think he's hoping in doing that, obviously, that he's going to get a response. And he went as far as to say, I told, he was strong in his post-match interview. He said I was, even stronger in my words to my players as well. So he was not happy. I think Ed Still must be wondering what he has to do to get 3 points. He looked very nervous, even when probably he shouldn't have very late on. I think this is a guy who feels like, maybe he's not going to win a game. That's the impression I'm going to get. And he hasn't, in truth, as a coach. He has not won a game in a long time. So I can see why he's not sleeping well. I don't know what you guys think, but I had a concern that maybe Brian Riemer didn't get his starting 11 kind of quite right here. I was surprised with some of his choices. I thought he could have been a little bit more offensive, even if they were playing away from home. Maybe this is to do with certain players not being kind of quite fit necessarily yet, but that might have played into the performance. I think he probably knew that Kortrijk were going to get in their faces as much as possible, being the home side, which they did, and in lots of ways, from our neutral perspective, I kind of quite enjoyed watching this one because it was a good feisty battle. But yeah, going to be really interesting to watch Anderlecht's next game to see how they react to this one, I think.
Yeah, well, I agree that Riemer actually should look in the mirror himself as well, because I do feel like that lineup was not the one they should have gone for. Like, should have been a bit more offensive. Also, that interview is on itself already interesting, but also it's the complete opposite of what he usually does. Usually, he is the one that sugarcoats things a bit, at least in front of the cameras. Maybe in a dressing room, most likely different, and protects the playing squad. But this time it was a complete opposite, and that contrast is telling, I guess. I think he was not happy about a lot of things, as that was clear to see. Like Scott mentioned, they're not pulling this one over the line for Kortrijk. Yet another blow, even though, of course, it's still a welcome point. But when you're that close and have played for against 10 for a while, and also probably should be a bit fuming at Ghana as well, because he probably could have been sent off earlier as well. He had put in a few rough challenges already where he maybe escaped another yellow card, but Ghana against his parent club, and a lot of fouls in that red card. Yeah, if it must not be fun to be him. Must have not have been fun to be him at that time in the dressing room. After the game, Ben also already mentioned, Dupé clearly not happy with Schmeichel, with the question about Schmeichel as well. So, with Schmeichel being there might be some trouble brewing there. It's way too early to say that, of course, but it's not very promising when it comes out like that. Disappointing result for both sides, although Anderlecht probably should still have won it, despite having a lower XG here, but they should have done better with what they had. They were dominating the game roughly, but defensively they were, they gave it away, 2 goals away, and putting yourself in a unfavorable position of a man down as well, through your own fault. Then it becomes difficult to win games, of course.
Yeah, no, definitely. In all that excitement to get to that game, I completely forgot that there was actually a game before that, which was Eupen against Standard Liege, where there was an equally angry manager. So let's head back in time to the Kerweg Stadion, where Standard travelled to Eupen, and the new boys were certainly in town, all over the pitch. Hayden started, Soa started, Gineppo started, Alzate started. Leifis returned from somewhere, Cyprus, I believe. He did actually play for the national team during the break, and forgot about him. Carl Hofkins did say, like, right, our season starts now. We've got the squad together. The squad is now complete. This is where the season starts. And it took them until the end of the first half to take the lead. Gineppo did have a nice flash of kind of quality when he took off on about 3 players and then smashed it over the bar. But it looked nice. And I think, as someone who's a big fan of Gineppo, that's always kind of been Gineppo to me. Is he's just technically great dribbling, but then it's that final product. So that's kind of what Standard are going to be hoping he can actually start to deliver. But Kawabi's long ball over the top, Kanga ran onto it, just bullying people, smashed it into the back of the net to get another goal, which is just, it's good to see. Him get his, I believe that's his second now, isn't it? He's got an assist, he's got 2 goals. He's a big, powerful presence up front, and if he starts to find a net, that it will definitely help them. Kawabi as well. He then followed up that assist to get his first goal, his second goal as well for Standard. Really nice finish into the far corner after some terrible playing out from the back from Erpen. Let's not forget that. Just awful from them, just giving the ball away far too easily. He took advantage. 2-0, and these goals happened in the 48th and the 4th and the 50th minute, which is still in the first half, because this game went on forever. This is just the start of it. Into the second half we go. Kamal Soa, he gets his first goal on debut. Shannon with a lovely cross in. Soa taps it in first time. Before that, Alfred Finnbogason had come off the bench for Gary Manny, who looks to have picked up a nasty injury. I haven't seen anything further about that, but hopefully it's not too serious, because he's had a really good start to the season. Pantovic finds Finnbogason in the 80th minute. He then smashes in to make it 3-1 with 10 minutes to go. Erpen then think they've got another goal back. It's offside. VAR intervenes. They give it offside, but Florian Kofod's having absolutely none of it. He's like, nope, we saw something on our screen. This wasn't offside. He kicks off enough that Jonathan Lardo's then like, okay, I'll have another look, which I think is ridiculous. I think it sets a really dangerous precedent. If a manager can kick off so much that you're going to go and have a look when it's, what's the manager seen? Like on their screen, they'll get one view, but the VAR should have all the views. So what's the point of VAR for managers then is going to be able to refer it back? I think Hofkin said, oh, do we now have like jokers? I think he called it. Like, are we all going to be able to use one where we can challenge some calls and stuff like that? Because he's like, if we are, that'd be great. I'm more than happy.
He thinks we're playing tennis, guys. He thinks we're playing tennis.
In the NBA now, they have it as well, where you get like one challenge, and if it fails, like that's it. Yeah, you get your one challenge. Or cricket as well, where they have the you can like review stuff and that. And I think and obviously it was still offside. And he said he went and thanked the referee afterwards for like checking and stuff. But I don't know. I personally think it sets a dangerous precedent. I don't think VAR is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but if the referees and VAR have decided that a decision is a decision, the manager should be able to pressurize a referee into then checking again. Like, no matter how adamant they believe it, there's a reason this game went on forever. And the sign of that is Steven Alzat managed to get himself sent off, I think, in the 90 plus 13, so 103rd minute for a dive. He gets his second yellow, a stupid dive. Then Hofkins gets booked in the 104th minute. This game has gone on forever by now. It's just ridiculous. It finally ends. Standard win 3-1. That's the main talking point, is about like this decision that was absolutely fine and it was offside, that was then referred and stuff like that, but kind of overshadows what was a really good win for Standard. Like, Erpen haven't been bad at all this season. We've praised some of the work Kofod's done, but Standard with the new boys, that will just ease some pressure on. It feels weird to say it, but 7-7-7 rather than kind of like the squad and the manager. It's the owners that are going to have less pressure, because Soa scored. Azat got himself sent off, but I mean, they're happy that he's back. Hayden had a solid game. Gineppo, like I said, he has some flashes. It wasn't his best game, but he'll get some fitness and stuff like that. So they finally get a win. Erpen lose. VAR in the mud. Just a a nice, entertaining game at the Kerberg Stadion.
Yeah, it was a bit of a circus, wasn't it? Did you have your popcorn, everybody? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Karl Hofkins was talking about this being, this is our ground zero. This is where it begins for us, which in some respects actually is kind of fair enough, because they've brought in some offensive intent, and you'll now get a chance to work with these players and hopefully. Tweak the system a little bit and be able to, start to do some damage on the pitch like they did this weekend. Having said that, actually, when I was watching the game, despite all of Standard's relative dominance in it, they didn't actually create that much, and the game really swung on two really bad mistakes from an open perspective. Poor defending for the first goal just allows Kanga to simply get in behind in a way that a player never really should. I thought that was pretty poor, although his finish was very, very, very good. I won't take that away from him at all. Really clinical finish. The second goal is just, comedy of errors. It's something that we've been, highlighting a few times over the last 3 or 4 weeks about, really awful playing out from the back, and it just been kind of catastrophic in this case. So the game really turned on two really bad mistakes, and particularly when you lose 2 goals so quickly in a key stage of a game like that, you're obviously going to be up against it. They came out in a different gear in the second half, open, and almost pulled one back kind of straight away, which would probably have made for an entirely second half if they had done. And to be fair to Open, they actually gave it a reasonably good go. For the majority of the second half. And there was a little period quite late on where it looked like, if they could have got that second, which I think was kind of Kofel's point. I think he was like, look, that's where the pressure came from, really, I think, in hoping to kind of claim that second that wasn't a second, because that would have made the last few minutes very interesting. Ben was talking about how this game went on forever. I think the combined stoppage time between the first and second half, I think, was probably around 20 minutes, if not just over as well, which is pretty extraordinary. I didn't think there was that much stoppage time in either the first or the second half, so it was just one of those games that was some weak refereeing in as well. Not just that, actually, to allow yourself to be bullied into what Ben was saying, kind of checking something that's already been checked against the regulations as well. Is Ben's right to highlight that there'll be people watching that going, okay. And isn't it interesting that Karl Hofkins has already commented on that and saying, wouldn't that be nice? I could take advantage of that. So he's right. There are people who will try this now, much like we've seen issues with players harassing referees on the pitch in leagues around Europe for ages now. In particular countries, it's a very specific problem. So hopefully that doesn't grow arms and legs. But just a slight note of caution for Standard fans. They will be delighted. Ground Zero has started well for them, but still not creating a massive amount this weekend, relying on mistakes to get the result done. They won't care. Carl won't care. They're off the mark, but there's still plenty of work to do. We'll see how they get on over the next 3 or 4 weeks with the new boys in the building now.
First win since the 14th of April and in 13 league games, so that's definitely what they will take home from this, together with the 3 points themselves. You said a lot of things already here, I guess. So already scored more league goals for Standard now after one game than he did for Louis. Eupen tuning out a bit too early in the first half. Actually, still a bit worrying, a little bit for Standard that they still there was this sense that Eupen actually still could get back if that second goal would not have been disallowed. That would have been a fun. Well, what was left, 5-7 minutes left to watch and see if they learned from their mistakes from last season as well. Finn Bogason also got his first goal, and it was also off the mark. Like I said, so many players this weekend. Balikwisha going back off after only 10 minutes without being injured. Yeah, that was also interesting man management from Hoefkes. Balikwisha had come on and had not been great at the goal that Finn Bogason scored. That's and probably some other tasks that he did not fill in like Hoefkens wanted at all. Alzate, with probably considering the why, so the dive, the minutes, 103 I believe it indeed it was, and like the score line by that time, so the game was all but won. It's one of the most stupidest cards you'll see this season for sure, and maybe I would never even bet on the most stupid one, even. But and also on his first game back, as well. That to add more to that. Just it was a funny one though, but not a very smart move there.
Yeah, I mean, it was so stupid, and it was just like I think was it Paulson was just like livid. He was so livid. He thought, because it's so funny because I feel like referees love the drama of it as well. Do you know what I mean? Where they're like, they blow the whistle, but they don't indicate which way they've given the free kick, and then they reach for their pocket, and everyone's like, "Oh, what's going to happen?" And then they get to give the card for the dive. They love it. They love the drama of it all, I'm sure. And I mean, there were plenty of it in this game, wasn't there? Let's go to Leuven. They hosted Ghent and got off to a really good start. The new man Bloons got his first goal of the season. Really nice play. I think it was Schrevers played the ball inside the kind of the back three of Ghent to an on-rushing Sagrado. He crossed it in. Bloons, he couldn't really miss, but I think he kind of almost did, because it wasn't a clean finish. It was kind of very much what like Zakiri had to do in that goal against Union. But yeah, he does kind of, it's almost behind him when he does put it into the net. But nice finish from him. Good for him to get off the mark. He needed that. Leuven absolutely needed that. They needed their striker to start scoring some goals, and he has done. However, they couldn't hold on to that lead. 37, so about half an hour later, they get back in the game. Sven Kuhns with the corner. Kandus heads it in. Prevost, he starts to come for the cross, realises he doesn't get it, goes back into the goal, but he's got absolutely no chance of keeping it out. And that's basically how this one stayed. There weren't any more goals. Ghent had plenty of chances, though. 22 shots, 2.14 expected goals. Prevost made a couple of saves, but they were really, really inefficient in front of goal. Nardi did have to come up with a really, really good save at the end of the game to ensure they actually escaped with a draw, because Leuven were just kind of hitting them on the counter-attack. But frustration for Ghent. They stay top of the league with that point, after Anderlecht obviously picked up just that point, and they still have a game in hand over them. For Leuven, it's probably a good point when you consider how good Ghent have been. They now move on to 6 points. It's starting to be, at the bottom there. They're kind of 5 points off the bottom with Westerlo, who are definitely happy that there's a bottom four that they're going to be going into if that was to finish today, because, the gap is starting to grow. But, I guess, guys, kind of the big takeaway from this one, Bruins, great to see Bruins get off the mark. Surprised that with all those chances and all those strikers that Ghent have, they couldn't really find a winner.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary of this game, really. I mean, two things for me with this one. I'm not sure how Ghent didn't win it. They should have, really. And, those worries about Leuven, for me anyway, are kind of increasing. I'm struggling to see where they're going to score enough goals to win games, really. I think tactically they probably got this one right in that they knew Ghent were going to largely dominate the game, so, they were going to have to play a counter-attacking game, and that's where they were going to get their best opportunities. The goal they scored was ridiculously easy, kind of out of nothing. I think Ghent just kind of switched off and gave them that for free, to be honest. Ridiculous stuff. Ghent should have got this over the line. So, for me, this is a really good point from Leuven's perspective. But my worries for them are increasing. I just don't see where the goals are going to come from to win nearly enough games for them at the moment. Defensively, they're not convincing either. So there's nothing to suggest that they're going to go on a run or anything like that at the moment. So I'm quite worried for them at the moment. And from what I've seen in the opening 7 games, my worries for them, which I had at the start of the season, that I thought they were vulnerable, are increasing, because I do think, I might be wrong about this, but I do think that Charleroi form will turn sooner rather than later, and I think it'll turn ahead of Leuven's as well. Standard obviously had a result which lifts them out of that bottom zone as well this weekend. So psychologically, things have switched around a little bit for them, and it just feels like the struggles going on and all of the background noise inside the club, which hasn't been helpful or positive, feels like it hasn't gone away, even though CEO Peter Williams obviously has kind of stepped down. It feels like things have kind of paused rather than ultimately being dealt with.
And again, I have a completely opposite feeling with Leuven. I feel like they just started picking up points now, 4 points out of the possible 6. With a game against Ghent, wings that as well, that they did turn their fortunes here already. Of course, Ghent did score 4 times even in this game, but 3 of them were well offside. So that's another reason that they probably should have won this game nonetheless. Then their unbeaten streak continues still, and like Ben said, with Braun-Brunes, do we have another player off the mark? And like I said, I feel like Leuven actually started picking up points right in time for Mike Bress's future at the club, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, he'll definitely be one of the more relieved men in Belgium football. Not just Belgium, in Belgian football at the moment. It definitely was a kind of a weekend of first goals, wasn't it? So let's finish off at the Dio Wasabi Stein for St. Truden against Mechelen. Didn't get off to a great start for Mechelen after 11 minutes when Belhali had to be taken off. It looked like one that you could kind of blame the pitch on. For me, him and Bocat, it wasn't really anything malicious or anything out of the ordinary. It was just kind of run-of-the-mill, shepherding the ball out. His foot seems to get stuck in the pitch. He goes down, and Scott, you mentioned he had that kind of injury before joining Mechelen, and it looked like it might be the same thing, because he knew instantly that was it. His game was up, which is a real shame, because I think he gave them a really nice kind of attacking fullback element that Sandy Walsh doesn't quite have in the same way. I mean, Walsh still does try and get forward, but I think Berhadi gave them a different kind of outlet there. But to be honest, this was a game that St. Truden were just all over. Their football was fantastic. They were just picking Mechelen apart where they could. It was just, again, the finishing. Fortunately for them, Fatih Kai had a couple of chances. I thought, maybe today is going to be the day he's finally going to get that first goal of the season. He himself then got injured in the 28th minute to be replaced by Joselfo Barnes. But it was kind of the men in behind that did the damage for St. Truden in this one. Ito with a lovely outside of the ball pass to Stoikers. Stoikers finding an on-rushing Hashioka. Hashioka just decided, I'm going to hit this rather than kind of faff around with it. Smashes it in off the post. Kook doesn't even really move. 1-0 to St. Truden. They kept playing. Suzuki made a couple of really good saves. I think he ended the game with about 7 saves in this one. Still doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence. There's just moments of his aerial judgment, I guess you could say, of crosses, just really it still seems like a work in progress. But shot stopping wise, I think it's undeniable. He has got some talent there, and he made a couple of decent saves to keep Mechelen out. Then in round about the hour mark, Ito does really well to win the ball back. He plays it out wide. The ball goes into Stoikers. Ito just continues his run. Stoikers, the pass is so good. It's such a good pass to find him. Ito shapes to curl it to Kook's left, but he sticks it to his right instead with just, absolute venom to get his first goal for St. Truden since joining. It was a great goal, and it was one of those ones I was like, finally they found the back of the net. And to be fair, he was saying, I think in some of the interviews before the game, that he feels like he needs to start kind of adding some goals to this side, because I think those midfielders are starting to realise that they don't have the firepower up front, but they've got the creativity and the ability to create in behind. So it's time for them to kind of step up. For Stoikers, I think and this is his first 2 assists of the season, but the Pro League released their kind of stats for the first bit of the season before the international break, and he created the most chances in the league, but had no assists, which is just ridiculous. And it just sums up the way this team plays. But he finally got 2 assists, fully deserved. I thought they were, despite Suzuki having to make a couple of saves, I thought they were pretty comfortable in this one. I thought they were the better team. Torsten Fink came out afterwards. And they released kind of one of those behind the scenes of him talking to the players. So you don't really know how much of what is said is actually recorded at that point. But he wasn't exactly. He said they did some good stuff, but he was like, the keeper made 7 saves, and we've got to be better than that because we've got a derby coming up. But yeah, Mechelen not great. Even though Scott, you said before you thought this is their best lineup. So it's slightly concerning that even with this kind of best lineup, they were definitely second best against the Canaries.
Yeah, it was one of the first comments I made when we started watching this, didn't we? How pleased I was that Stephen Defoe had picked what I think is probably his strongest starting 11 at the moment. Lost Rafik Belgali early, as Ben was saying, really frustrating. Don't know how bad that is yet. Hopefully it's not a reoccurrence of the injury that Ben was talking about, because if it is, he's going to be out for a good few months. So we await for news of that. Just want to, Ben mentioned Suzuki, as did Torsten Fink, right to highlight him. I thought he had a good game. I think he's looking really good very early on for St Truden already, really commanding that area. Great communicator, seems to pass on confidence to his defence as well. So he's looking really, really good. And a bit of a fearless keeper as well. I think I kind of like that. He's got something in that in his personality that I kind of quite like already. Something worth highlighting about Mechelen, we know how inconsistent. We talk about them, that in relation to them all the time, because they remain consistently inconsistent. But their poor away form does need addressed, and it's not so much the fact that they're not winning often enough away from home. I think it's the actual performance levels. If you go away from home and you have a bad away record over a long period of time, but at least you perform sometimes, you can go, okay, right, well, the performance levels were fine, we didn't win, whatever. I think there is now a pattern that's been set in place for a long time, which is a definite problem, which needs attention, and that is just their actual performance levels in away fixtures simply aren't good enough, I don't think. I mean, it was obvious to me in the first 15 minutes, and I actually missed the kickoff of the game. I missed the first 10 minutes, but the first 10 minutes that I did see, I was thinking to myself that the level that St Truden were passing the ball and moving it was about 3 gears ahead of Mechelen's. And I did think if St Truden score first here, which they managed to do, the Mechelen were always going to struggle without really upping the tempo. And it's very difficult to do that when you go behind in a game against a side who do play at quite a good tempo, like St Truden have started this season. So there are some sort of recurring themes underlying Mechelen's away performances, which I think really should be concerning to Stephen Defoe, because you can't rely on your home form as good as their home form generally is, and there are too many good players in that Mechelen side to be able to be lazy enough for you to go, well, it's our home form that ultimately is more important. They've got quite a lot to offer offensively, but in away games, it's just not turning up, and it's a wee bit frustrating, I suspect, for Mechelen fans and for me to look at them this weekend and go, okay, that's quite a decent starting 11. All things considered, but it was less than the sum of its parts this weekend. So I think there are some simple but important things that need addressed there from a Mechelen perspective. And as Ben was saying, it was a pretty straightforward win for St Truden at the end. I didn't really think they got out of first gear. They didn't play quite as well this week as they've been playing recently, but managed to get was a pretty easy win in the end, purely because of the tempo in which they played the game at. And it could have been more than 2, in truth. It could have been more.
Yep. 2 streaks ended there. Mechelen's 3 games winning streak. So they didn't make it a 4th in a row. That and Sint-Truiden had not won after 4 games, so they got one. So yeah, that's the main takeaways there. I guess you guys said most of it. I feel like Kuken maybe should have done a bit better on that second goal. It went in his corner, but okay. I don't think it was his fault that Mechelen lost here. Indeed, the overall performance. Schoofs also should have done a lot better with the one chance he got straight after halftime to equalize. That's to bring it on to another player, to another position as well that could have turned the game. But that's good for Sint-Truiden and Mechelen back to third, I guess.
Scott, over to you for some challenger where streaks were ended, and yeah, there was plenty of drama.
Yeah, streaks were ended indeed, Ben. Score roundup, RFC Liège beat Club Next 3-1. Young Genk lost 4-2 to Zulte Waregem in a game that I saw all of. Anderlecht Futures lost 3-1 to Patro Eisden. Dender ended Lommel's 100% streak. They won 3-1 at home in another game that I saw. I've been watching a lot of CPL this week, actually. Beerschot and Beveren played out a 0-0 draw. Denza beat Serang 1-0. Frank Baran won 2-0 at home against Liège, and Oostend are out of the drop zone, much to their fans' delight. First win, they won 1-0 against SL16. So Lommel are still top, albeit they've lost their 100% record. Zulte are second now, after picking up 3 points this weekend. And Zulte, interestingly, are there's something about them, it just remains unconvincing, but I think they know that. Vincent Everard's been talking this week about there's a lot for him to consider and quite a lot to do. So I think there are things he's definitely aware of and unhappy with that he's going to tinker with. Patro Eisden, interestingly, are now up to third. They've picked up their third win of the season. They've had a really strong start to the season. And it'll be interesting to see if a certain Steph Peters, who obviously they've acquired now, can help them build upon that strong start, because he's a player who can make a real difference for you, particularly at this level as well. And Oostend, as I was mentioning, their first win and getting out of the drop zone. So they're the really big takeaways from the Challenger Pro League this week.
Yeah, and I'm glad you picked up on Patro being third, and then you got Von Boran just behind them in fourth. So it's nice to see these kind of the two of the newly promoted sides really kind of up and about there. Whether that will remain for the rest of the season is obviously kind of in progress. But then obviously the Liège have obviously got off the mark as well. So it's good to see these kind of teams get going. But then you look kind of near the bottom. Obviously Oostend, like you mentioned, they've started to turn it around a little bit. But then you've got Serang down there, Liège, who I think we probably expected. Yes, it's only been 5 games, but I think we probably expected a little bit more from them this season. And I think for some of those sides that have got like an Oostend, like you look at Beerschot, who went down a couple of seasons ago now, that they're kind of languishing around in that league a little bit. Like, yes, they got a good point against Beveren, but it's just, you can get stuck down there by the look of things. And that's another kind of, I was kind of thinking about it with Westerlo, like how long they were stuck in and around the second division trying to get promoted for so long, got up, and now like they've really invested and it's not going terribly well. They must be like desperate to not be get stuck back down here. But yeah, definitely entertaining. Before we go, just a quick look over the fixtures that are coming up in Europe, and then obviously we'll discuss more of the fallout from those next week when they're in the books. But Barcelona will host Antwerp. Then moving into the Europa League, and Union will get to host Toulouse in Group E of the Europa League. Ghent, they will face Zorya, and then Club Brugge, they host Besiktas, and Genk host Fiorentina. Those are all on Thursday. So I don't know how we're going to watch all of those games or keep abreast of all those games because, there's so much going on. But we're obviously more than happy that they have gotten in there eventually through one form or another. But anyway, that probably just about wraps it up for this episode. As always, guys, it's been a pleasure chatting all things Belgian football with you.
It has indeed, and good luck to all those Belgian sides in European action this week. And as ever, bring us back some coefficient points, please.
Precisely, nothing to add there, and we'll be back soon.
Absolutely, yeah. And as per usual, if you like what we do and have enjoyed this podcast, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. And if you've got any questions for the pod, get in touch with us in the usual ways. We're more than happy to either answer them straight away or we'll answer them on the next episode. But as per usual, thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.